The WNBA just exposed its biggest problem, and Caitlin Clark's Indiana Fever caught them red-handed. What happened in the 2024 playoffs between the Fever and Las Vegas Aces wasn't just controversial, it was a complete breakdown of everything basketball should represent. The referees didn't just make bad calls, they practically handed Vegas the series on a silver platter, and the footage proves it. 41 fouls in a single game, 16 in just one quarter. Players hitting the deck every possession, while the league's golden franchise got every whistle they wanted. This wasn't playoff basketball. This was a rigged system protecting its favorites, and Indiana paid the price. If you're tired of seeing the Fever get screwed over by terrible officiating, smash that like button right now and let the league know we're watching. The truth about what really went down needs to be heard, but that wasn't even the worst part. The real scandal was how they targeted specific players, especially Lexi Hull. She was already dealing with a back injury from game 1 that should have kept her on the bench. Most players would have sat out to protect their bodies for the future, but Hull strapped up, took painkillers, and stepped onto that court knowing exactly what was coming, and Vegas knew it too. They went after her like sharks smelling blood in the water. Every screen was an extra shove. Every box out included an elbow to the ribs. She hit the floor more times in that single game than most players do in an entire series. Yet somehow, mysteriously, the refs never seemed to notice when Vegas was the one delivering the punishment. What makes this even more shocking is that Hull didn't just survive, she thrived. 5 3-pointers, tying the Fever's playoff record while basically playing through torture. After the game, she admitted she needed constant treatment just to stay on the court. Her trainers were working on her before, during, and after the game. That's not normal playoff physicality. That's targeted harassment disguised as basketball. And the league just let it happen because Vegas needed to win. The numbers tell a story the highlights won't show you. In game 1, when Indiana shocked everyone with an 87-73 victory in Vegas, the Fever proved they belonged. Kelsey Mitchell dropped 34 points like it was nothing, completely owning the Aces' defense. They moved the ball with precision, controlled the tempo, and most importantly, they made A'ja Wilson look ordinary. The supposed MVP went 6 for 22 from the field, channeling her inner brick layer, while Indiana's defense swarmed her every move. It was disciplined, smart basketball that exposed Vegas as beatable. But here's where it gets interesting. Even in that dominant win, people noticed something was off. The foul calls were already tilted toward Vegas, but Indiana's execution was so perfect it didn't matter. They won by 16 points despite the refs trying to keep it close. That should have been a warning sign about what was coming next. Vegas doesn't just lose at home. They especially don't get embarrassed on the night their star gets her MVP trophy. The league's narrative was crumbling, and someone had to fix it. Game 2 became the correction, and it was ugly from the start. Vegas abandoned actual basketball for street fighting. Forearms to the chest, shoulders to the ribs, collisions that belonged in football, not basketball. The refs suddenly developed selective vision, calling every tiny contact against Indiana while Vegas played like they were in a cage match. 16 fouls in one quarter isn't basketball, it's a joke. The Fever couldn't find any rhythm because every time they started a run, the whistle blew. Every time they got momentum, another phantom call stopped the game. Christy Sides, Indiana's coach, couldn't even hide her frustration in the post-game interview. She straight up said it's hard to find flow when there's a foul called every 10 seconds. Think about that. A professional coach basically calling out the officiating on live television because it was that obvious. She mentioned how Vegas was allowed to be aggressive and physical while Indiana got called for breathing too hard. The double standard was so blatant that even the coaches couldn't pretend it wasn't happening. What happened next would shock everyone who actually watched the tape. There's a sequence where Indiana cut Vegas's lead to 8 points, building momentum for a comeback. Then mysteriously, 4 consecutive fouls got called against the Fever. Not 1, not 2, but 4 straight possessions ending in free throws for Vegas. The lead ballooned back to 13, and the game was essentially over. That's not coincidence, that's game management. The refs knew exactly what they were doing, and they executed it perfectly. Aaliyah Boston's experience tells you everything about how this game was officiated. She finished with 13 rebounds and 10 points, numbers that look decent on paper. But watch the actual game, and you'll see a different story. Every rebound required fighting through holds and pushes that never got called. Every shot attempt involved more body contact than a wrestling match. She's a third third-year player being treated like a punching bag, and the refs acted like it was all clean defense. Boston even hinted at it after the game, saying sometimes smaller players get away with things that shouldn't be possible. That's code for the refs are letting them cheat. The manipulation went deeper than just the fouls, though. Vegas targeted Indiana's style of play specifically. The Fever thrive on pace, movement, and spacing. They want to run, create easy buckets in transition, and keep defenses scrambling. But when you're stopping every 30 seconds for free throws, that game plan dies. Vegas turned it into a half-court slog where they could use their size and the refs' protection to dominate. It wasn't about being the better team, it was about changing the rules to fit their needs. Odyssey Sims deserves massive credit for even keeping Indiana competitive. She dropped 18 points while basically playing 1 versus 5 plus the refs. Every drive to the basket involved contact that would be a flagrant in the regular season. Every pull-up jumper came with a hand in her face and another on her hip. But she kept attacking, kept creating, because someone had to fight back against the corruption. Her points weren't just buckets, they were acts of rebellion against a rigged system. But wait, it gets even worse. The media coverage after the game completely ignored what actually happened. Every headline celebrated A'ja Wilson's 25 points, 9 rebounds, 5 steals performance like she dominated through skill. Nobody mentioned how many of those points came from phantom calls. Nobody talked about the free throw disparity. Nobody questioned why one team was allowed to play prison rules while the other got called for existing. The narrative was already written before the game started. Vegas needed to win. Wilson needed to look like an MVP, and Indiana needed to be put in their place. What's really damning is looking at the free throw numbers across both games. In their loss, Indiana shot significantly fewer free throws despite driving to the basket just as much as Vegas. The Aces lived at the line in Game 2, padding their stats and controlling the game's flow through referee manipulation. This wasn't subtle home cooking, this was a 5-course meal prepared specifically for Vegas's benefit, and everyone just pretended it was normal playoff basketball. The injury situation makes this even more disgusting. Lexi Hull should never have been put in that position. Playing through a back injury is dangerous enough, but doing it while getting targeted by opponents who know the refs won't protect you? That's borderline criminal. The league has all these rules about player safety, but apparently they don't apply when Vegas needs a win. Hull could have suffered a career-altering injury, and the WNBA would have just shrugged and called it playoff intensity. Here's something the league doesn't want you to know. The officiating crew for Game 2 had a history of controversial calls favoring home teams in crucial games. This wasn't their first rodeo destroying a fair competition, but instead of addressing the pattern, the WNBA keeps assigning these same refs to the biggest games. It's almost like they want certain outcomes and know exactly which officials will deliver them. The psychological impact on Indiana can't be ignored either. Imagine preparing all season, earning your playoff spot, winning Game 1 on the road, and then having it all taken away by forces outside your control. How do you motivate players to keep fighting when they know the deck is stacked? How do you game plan when the rules change depending on which uniform you're wearing? Christy Sides had to somehow keep her team focused, despite knowing they were fighting an unwinnable battle. What makes Caitlin Clark's situation even more frustrating is that she brought unprecedented attention to the WNBA. Attendance records, TV ratings, merchandise sales all skyrocketed because of her presence. The Fever became must-watch television, and the league rewarded that by allowing their playoff opponents to basically assault her teammates without consequence. That's how you treat the franchise that saved your league? By rigging games against them? The double standard becomes crystal clear when you compare how different players get officiated. A'ja Wilson can throw shoulders, set moving screens, and bulldoze through defenders all game long. But when an Indiana player breathes too aggressively near her, it's an automatic foul. The WNBA wants to pretend it's about showcasing talent and competition, but actions speak louder than words. They're protecting their established stars at the expense of fair play. This brings us to the bigger question nobody wants to ask. If the WNBA is willing to manipulate playoff games this blatantly, what else are they controlling? Regular season outcomes? Award voting? Draft positions? Once you open the door to corruption, it doesn't just stop at one game. The integrity of the entire league comes into question, and fans have every right to be suspicious of everything they're watching. The solution is actually simple, but the league won't implement it because they benefit from the current system. full transparency in officiating, including public reviews of controversial games, accountability for bad calls, and actual consequences for refs who show clear bias. Other sports have started moving in this direction, but the WNBA acts like it's still 1990, where nobody can rewatch the footage and see the truth. Indiana's players showed incredible class by not completely calling out the corruption publicly. They gave diplomatic answers, talked about needing to play through physicality, and took the high road. But reading between the lines, you can feel their frustration. They know what happened. Everyone who watched knows what happened. The only people pretending it was legitimate are the ones who benefited from the fix. The aftermath of this series should have been a wake-up call for the league. Social media exploded with fans calling out the obvious bias. Video breakdowns showing the foul disparity went viral. Even casual viewers could see something was seriously wrong. But instead of addressing the concerns, the WNBA doubled down, praising the intensity of the playoffs and celebrating Vegas's victory like it was earned fairly. What's particularly insulting is how they marketed this as competitive playoff basketball. There's nothing competitive about predetermined outcomes. There's nothing exciting about watching refs decide games. Real fans want to see the best teams win through skill and execution, not through favorable whistles and targeted violence. The WNBA is destroying its own product by prioritizing narratives over competition. The long-term damage this causes can't be overstated. Young players watching see that talent and hard work aren't enough if you're not on the league's preferred team. Fans lose interest when they realize the games aren't legitimate competitions. Sponsors question whether they want to be associated with a corrupt product. The WNBA is sabotaging its own growth for short-term narrative control. This is exactly why the league's ratings and attendance dropped off after the initial Caitlin Clark boost. People tuned in expecting real basketball and got WWE-style predetermined outcomes instead. You can only fool audiences for so long before they realize they're watching scripted entertainment, not actual sport. And once that trust is broken, it's nearly impossible to get back. The Fever deserved better. Their fans deserved better. The sport of basketball deserved better. What happened in that series wasn't just bad officiating. It was a betrayal of everything competitive sports should represent. And until the WNBA acknowledges this problem and fixes it, they'll continue losing credibility with every rigged game they allow. If you're as disgusted by this corruption as we are, hit that subscribe button and help expose what's really happening in the WNBA. The truth needs to be heard, and together we can demand better for teams like Indiana who just want a fair chance to compete.